Trudge, and what have we just seen? PSG 2, Arsenal 1. What the Hathaways? Football can make you feel so alive one night, and then the very next just remind you that we're all going to die. Yes, sad night for Gooners everywhere. No Arsenal in the Champions League final. On the night, there was also no new Pope. Oh, a night of hope and shattered hope. 3-1, bumped out on aggregate fight and flight. Arsenal summoned an XG of 3.03. What an agony, but could not find the finish. Let's just say Arsenal. There's no side in football who are better at the game without the goals. Really the story of their season. Tonight was like an Arsenal greatest hits album that makes you wonder if there's something cursed in the entire area of North London's water system. We're going to break it down. Take your questions. Come and be with us. And by we, I mean me and the very handsome 1990s Argentinian national team human vibe made real. Fresh back from Milan, from your Athletic. Always a joy to see the Tibetan Book of the Dead come alive. It's Mr. James Horncastle.
Hello, Rog. I think the Tibetan Book of the Dead can teach us a lot about the last 48 hours.
Oh my God, can it ever? About the last 45 minutes. We will talk PSG Arsenal in just one sec. But James, you are back from seeing, I'm not sure what it would be called. Is there a word for double la remontada in Spanish? Because last night was all that's good about football.
Yeah, I saw remontadas within remontadas. It was like peering into the Matrix and not understanding what was real anymore.
Reels within wheels. What was your favourite memory? Because we will break the game down in one moment. But tell us, what, when you think about last night and you shut your eyes, what immediately comes to mind?
Okay, so when Rafinha scored in the 87th minute to bring Barca back from 2-0 down to 3-2 up with 3 minutes to go, I looked down from the press box and there was a fan who just did this thing. When your dog, you take him out to the park and he needs to go and he's kind of a little bit ashamed about going and he just kind of looks over his shoulder like this and he has this very ashamed look on his face. There was an Inter fan like that, just looking into the distance without looking at anything, just completely shocked. And then 15 minutes later, after Davide Fratesi scored what would be the winning goal for Inter, he was jumping over the railings, the second tier of San Siro, like this. And the stewards rushed down the stairs and dashed across to him because they didn't know what his intentions were. They thought he'd been through so much despair, it was maybe all too much for him. But no, he was overcome with joy. He was on cloud nine. So seeing what it meant to the fans around you was, very memorable.
James, I've got to tell you, I love that the stewards in Milan did not seem to mind when he was pulling the face like a dog about to take a crap on the terrace. It was only when he leapt over that they were like, hey, dude, just hold on there. But I love this, and we will talk more about this Russian nesting doll of remontadas in just one moment. I did love this tweet from @JohnBoy. Why watch Inter Barcelona when you can simply snort cocaine and ride a motorcycle out of a helicopter? God bless you there. And I will say, James and I are not here alone. This is a Do It Live, which means you, dear GFOPs, can be a massive part of the show. Come on, ask us questions about football, about tonight, about last night, about the final, about whatever you want, about life. Here's how you can. Scan the QR code, top left of your screen, take you into a Zoom with our producer, the great Jordan, who'll get you set up to ask your question. Come and be with us. It's audio only, so do not be afraid.
Rog, is it the same Jordan who is dating Bill Belichick, who is the producer? Or...
Yeah, I told you not to tell them that. I told you, because now you're going to ask me where I met her, and I'm not allowed to tell you. That's how these things work.
Really?
I get all my producers off, quote, Miami dating sites. Gustavo Kikayo in the chat. And by the way, click the like now on the bottom of the screen and come into the chat. Get stuck in. The great Gustavo Kikayo in the chat just says, one word to describe tonight. Pain. I've been there, Mr. T. I've been there. Let's get to it. Oh, James, Arsenal. This Heart of Darkness journey to cap a season summed up by GFOP @Ricardo, who posted this season, the Arsenal club dog's name should be changed from win to draw. Oh my God, bite your arm off for a draw. That's a nice name for a dog, draw, actually. Arsenal.
Rog, do you think that dog, do you think Win right now is turning around, looking back at this team and this performance, much like that Instagram that I was talking
By the
about?
way, when you describe that, I do want you to know I have a photo of my dog, Martin Scorsese, in that pose in our guest bathroom. It's a delight and a thing of wonder. God bless you, Martin. And God bless you, Win. I think Win, if I'm guessing, is probably like, you know what? Spurs aren't such a bad team. He's thinking about defecting. But let's leave poor Win out of this. I've met Win this season, and genuinely, I'm not cowed by celebrity, but it was like I was in awe of this animal. Coming into tonight, Win's owners knew this was their everything. Knew they'd won 4 straight on the road in Europe, including 1 at the Bernabeu. But this was their moment. Arsenal's record in semi-finals has been a disaster. They failed to win any of their last semi-final games in all competitions, failed to score in the last 6 in a row. It's astonishing. But this would have given them hope. First 64 years of the European Cup / Champions League. The team that had lost the first leg went out all but 6 times. It's happened actually 5 times since 2018. And guess what? PSG have been in 3 of those. So this was Doom Club facing a team with one of their own collapse demons. And also without Dembele. The goal scorer in the first leg was on the bench with a muscle injury. So take us back, resummon your emotions before kickoff. How did you feel going into this one?
Well, I mean, I saw the big choreography in the Virage Hotel. There was a couple of them. And I think they had seen Arsenal's last week, which we talked about and we were quite disparaging about. And they said, okay, we're going to really bring our A game here. And the first one said, Arsenal bottle jobs since 2006. And you know what? There was a catchphrase from Mikel Arteta that was put on the Arsenal social channels before this game, which I think was there to inspire and there to motivate. But it was just as kind of empty as the kind of make it happen tifo that we saw last week at the Emirates. But judging by how Arsenal started this game, you know, I think that seeing that PSG tifo whilst they were warming up and saying Arsenal bottle jobs since 2006, it gave them motivation. And, you know, it did the work for them. So after the first few moments, Rog, I thought this is on. I was surprised by Arsenal because my prediction going into this game would be what happened, which is that it would be a PSG Inter final.
Oh, God bless. You got your will with your magic, your role of prophecy, James Adamas. But you're right, fresh out the gates. Yeah, we did want to see Arsenal's mentality. They've been so dead-legged in the home tie in the opening minutes. That sad little tifo, stunned silence as they conceded the early goal. Strange zombie-like early mentality, really. I've got to be honest, here they were in the Bear Pit in Paris. You're fighting pits of marine. The drummers are both topless and incessant. The atmosphere, a madness. And I've got to be honest, they opened positively, potently, Partey back, smothering. Declan Rice, inside 3 minutes, I think it was Timber that delivered the ball. Rice just beasted, let like a flounder in the Thames. I don't know if they do leap, but I like it. Just a nodded inches wide. Seconds later, it was Martinelli. Late run off a throw-in. Need away from Donnarumma. I mean, Martinelli was doing Hakimi at will in that opening 10 minutes. And I kept thinking about Ernest Hemingway wrote, the sun also rises, I believe 9 kilometres from Parc des Princes. And it was like Arsenal tearing at PSG like bulls in admittedly very fresh Adidas design shirts. It did feel intoxicating. It did feel, I wasn't sure if it was on, James, but it felt like whatever Arteta, whatever pickpocket madness, whatever heart and clock, whatever strategies he'd use in a run-up, the team collectively had taken it on.
Yeah, I thought watching that first 15 minutes in particular that for all what was said in that PSG tifo, what we saw in that first 15 minutes was a reminder that the ultimate bottle jobs in the Champions League are, in fact, PSG. And it seemed like that was manifesting itself in a kind of bad karma for all the PSG fans there. You also had this weird juxtaposition of very intimidating atmosphere, flares popping off and all that sort of thing, but then Euro techno as well, just booming around the Parc des Princes, which I'm not sure if they go together, Rog. I'm not sure you can have that kind of bristling, angry, you're coming into our banlieue at the moment, and then you have sort of Euro techno where
with coordinated pyrotechnics as well. I mean,
exactly, and glow sticks.
It was very odd. It was like you have one of the most authentic ultra atmospheres, and then it was like watching a hat on a hat. The way they did coordinated pyro and crazy techno. You had it naturally. It didn't need to be augmented, and it was fascinating. I mean, but Arsenal were not deterred early on. Partey, using the very way Bournemouth had scored on Arsenal at the weekend, playing the role of Anton Semenyo with the long throw after long throw, which is amazing. Arsenal had 81% possession in the opening 10 minutes. Donnarumma, immense in the early exchanges. We'll talk about him in a minute. Erdegaard drove a sweet, fresh, true strike from the edge of the area, lashed through traffic. I don't know how Donnarumma got down to it. Save was unreal. It was like watching a human with the wingspan of a wandering albatross and the reflexes of a chartreuse cat.
But he's taller than the Eiffel Tower, Rog.
Yeah,
People don't understand that.
Facts. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about him. I mean, he's a phenomenal shot stopper. He also has woven in there a reputation for errors, particularly in the league. A profoundly flawed gent. It's like a wall, an insurmountable wall, but that wall has cracks in it. PSG both love him and have ridden him to the final. I mean, who can forget the Liverpool heroics? But they've also linked James to a host of replacements in the summer transfer window.
Yeah, I remember covering Italy's first game at the Euros. So it was my first press conference upon arriving in Germany. Get to the Westfalenstadion in Dortmund, and it was Italy-Albania. And what I love about covering major tournaments is even for Italy and Albania, there are journalists from all over the world there who are entitled to ask whatever question they want. And this Russian guy didn't ask about the game. He just said, Gigio, PSG have signed a comrade from my country, young Safanov. He is coming for your place. Are you intimidated? And Gigio kind of just sort of, brushed it off as he, sort of brushes, mountains off his shoulders because they're so big. But that's the thing, there's always this kind of slight skepticism about him. You said that he has cracks in him. You can see that from the scar that he carries on his face. But I mean, this Champions League knockout stage has just been one long highlight reel of Donnarumma.
What's he like, James, as a person?
He's like a really. This sounds such a cliche, but it's true. He's like a gentle giant. Like he's from around Naples, so he's this kind of very warm, quite cuddly character. I'm not saying like he spent his childhood eating mozzarella like most people like apples, but he's got a big frame on him, and he's very warm and quite. I wouldn't say quiet, but he's pretty understated, and I think that is actually his superpower. As much of his sort of wingspan that you referred to. It's a guy who made his debut at 16 in the Scala del Calcio, San Siro, where most people just kind of wilt. If you can make your debut at 16 there, you can play anywhere. And as much as people like to point out the fact that he makes mistakes in the league, he doesn't really have to concentrate in the league, because if they drop a point here, drop a point there, in the grand scheme of things, for PSG, in Liga, it's not going to matter. But in the Champions League, particularly in the knockout stages, where he's had to focus, we've seen the best of Donnarumma, and we've seen him be one of the best goalkeepers in the world.
So fascinating. Edwin van der Sar talked about that challenge that Donnarumma experiences in the league. For when he played in Manchester United, he came on our show and he talked about how United were so dominant in the league in his day. Yes, believe it, young listeners. United were once that dominant. He said it was the hardest job in the world to be the goalkeeper because you had to constantly focus. You knew you'd have to face one attack on the break, and you had to be ready for that. He said he'd sweat through his shirt, just like obsessively focusing on the game and for not making any saves, not actually doing anything, just the mental focus that ultimately Donnarumma probably doesn't need to exert PSG stroller league to such a degree. But Arteta is by and large a risk-averse coach. God, Karina Lopez in the chat knows that, continuing the theme of one-word comments. She just says the word agony. I'm not a doctor, Karina Lopez, but I play one on this show, and we're here to heal you. There was no taking out the crowd in the stadium, despite Arsenal's dominance. PSG just couldn't get on the ball, I think, in the first 12 minutes. So practically, I think it was their second attack. Kvaratskhelia cut inside. Just, my God, Champions League so magical because of the elite ruthlessness of the talent on display. Used Timber as a screen. Last one, truly madly sweetly, thundered off the post. These posts in the Champions League, you mean Lamal had one yesterday, also thundered back in the most dramatic way. And I did start to wonder whether Arsenal's intensity in that opening spell could be continued. That worry manifested itself. 27th minute, poor Declan Rice conceded a free kick on the edge of the area. Delivery cleared, or so it seemed. Dropped to Fabian Ruiz, who controlled it with his tum-tum. Just took a moment to lock and load, and then obliterated that ball. So he vaporized it. I think when it off Saliba, he was punished for turning his back on the ball as a defender with a thrash that left Ruiz's foot with a vicious, sweet menace. His first ever Champions League goal. David Raya honestly did well to even get within the ether of the ball, close to the smoke. It was howitzer, James.
Yeah, he was still in the same atmosphere. Sort of almost like when you see, a spaceman sort of leave the craft, but he's sort of still tethered to the craft, but moving in slow motion. That was David Raya. But Fabian Ruiz, the body shift with which he sort of chests the ball and sends the Arsenal defender the other way. I mean, just magnificent. I mean, what an elegant player Fabian Ruiz is as well. Left foot, right foot. You could imagine that Fabian Ruiz in 10 years' time will win Dancing with the Stars.
God, I like the dramatic pause there. I was waiting for you to react.
It was a Fabian Ruiz pause.
Fabian Ruiz will. Ballon d'Or. No, Dancing with the Stars. God bless.
Yeah, glitter ball.
Oh my God. It was in that moment, James. Just Arsenal's shoulders dropped. I realised how much I wanted this for them, how much I wanted it for their fans. I mean, instead we got to see the team just respond as if they had the stuffing ripped out of them. Doué played in again by Kvaradonna. Should have made it 2-0. Ray, a fine save. But my God, Arsenal suddenly went from hungry like the wolf to just panicked, frustrated, a lot of desperate key moment decision making, ill-advised decisions in moments of heightened intensity. And this being PSG, Arsenal did have the chances, and it just seemed that all they could conjure was low ball after low ball across the box. 10 shots attempted in the first half, twice the number of PSG, but that lack of clinicality almost made it more of an agony. In context, it was so bloody haunting. It just sums up the entire season, that lack of a real striker. That has a thing, and we'll talk about it, the big picture takeaways from the game, but it's that which has got so many Arsenal fans I know fuming about, dereliction of duty. Question we don't know the answer to, James, is did Arteta even want one in January? That's the question we do not know the answer to.
Well, I think they definitely looked at what options were available. We had a story on The Athletic that they looked at signing Alvaro Morata, for example, from AC Milan, but his loan was already very advanced with Galatasaray. Whether the very demanding fan base in North London, in Highbury, would have accepted Morata, just 6 months after he'd captained Spain to winning the Euros? I'm not so sure. I think there's quite a lot of Premier League skepticism towards Morata, which I think is a bit unfair. Lovely guy, very cerebral guy. But people think, he's maybe not a man who does it regularly enough for his team. So they definitely looked at the options out there. I think whilst wanting to keep their powder dry for the summer. You know what? There aren't that many strikers out there, Rog. They're a rare breed. The former Arsenal coach, legend Arsene Wenger, when he wasn't trying to diminish Tottenham like he did yesterday by saying, sort of winning the Europa League to get into the Champions League is like having a cheat code in a video game. When he's not doing that, he did say that the only place in the world that regularly creates strikers these days is the place where I've just come back from, Argentina, South America. It's where there's these kind of dusty pitches, or there's kids playing in these uneven surfaces, on stairwells in favelas or on kind of streets in sort of shanty towns in Argentina, and it sharpens the instincts of strikers, and we've lost that in Europe, and there aren't many of these guys going around.
Stop the overcoaching, people. By the way, Gina Lawless in the chat comes up with a singular word: devastated. God, there's a lot of pain out here.
Wow.
Genuinely, it's like a doctor call-in show. Cinematic moment. Saka went down on the floor just as Dembele, suddenly so potent this season, got off the bench to rapturous applause. Second half, really an attempt to even keep the pretense of a fist clenched. Saka curved the shot, plucked out the air by that tower of power, Donnarumma. Then the agony. VAR pull playback to spot poor young Miles Lewis-Skelly, who'd honestly been suffering all night. There was a Hakimi arc of a shot, caught his trailing hand as he kind of moved his body. The momentum flipped it out. VAR awarded a handball. Would that have been given in the Premier League, James?
Well, I think there was one that City claimed against Forest recently, which did not get given. I always find it interesting listening to my compatriots talk about European refereeing as though it's like a different form of dance or something that's we don't have in the UK. It's tango, it's
the lambada, the forbidden dance,
the lambada, and the rules are completely different, and yet the rules are set by IFAB, which basically says all of the leagues all over the world, here's the rule book. And, ultimately, it's up for your interpretation. Do what you want with it, but them's the rules. And so, I don't think it's all that different from what we see on the continent. I think it's ultimately about the man on the night.
It was, and he was a strict constructionist in this moment. My God, he was like a Justice Alito giving that penalty, and the actual penalty was irrelevant because it was a Ricky Tiki Taka situ. It was like Mongoose against Cobra. Vitinha made a decision that was arguably as ill-judged as his hair and hairband combo. Not that I can knock anybody's hair. God bless you, Vitinha. Raya Strong smothered. Didn't feel like it would make any difference in the moment. That proved to be Hakimi lashing in. Oh, like Spando Ballet, his aim was true. Really in agony. Salt on salt on salt in a wound. As Arsenal clip past 10 hours of goalless football in semi-finals. That hurts. Poor Saka double, triple teamed for much of the game. Got a consolation goal. And that's it. I mean, it's painful. It's amazing to me to make a semi-final of the Champions League. It's an honour to make it that far. And then to have this agony to live through for 108 minutes. Have to flash back to the argument that was carried out in the media this week between Declan Rice and Wayne Rooney. Rooney claimed that Arsenal have, quote, a psychological fear of winning trophies. James, do you believe in such a thing, that different teams in different eras, different players, different coach, that the old argument now, we talk about the DNA of a club, is true, that it can be contagious?
Yes, I do think there is something to that, the intangible about a club having a identity that cannot be altered in a laboratory. But having said that, there are a couple of exceptions. One is Barcelona, for example, very heavily influenced by Rinus Michels and Johan Cruyff coming over from Ajax and basically saying, we're going to make a Dutch Spanish team out of you. Dutch Catalan team. Sorry, Catalan independence. I didn't want to annoy you there. And that's been very influential in reshaping Barcelona's identity. And then you've got Arsenal themselves, who Arsenal used to be 1-0 to the Arsenal. Arsenal used to be, let's play this offside line where we all stand up and raise our hands like this sort of thing. And then Arsene Wenger came in and completely changed how we all think about Arsenal as being this tippy-tappy, let's walk the ball in, let's only score beautiful goals. Completely changed their identity. So as much as now I kind of understand where Rooney's coming from, because Rooney steps off that estate in Croxteth in Merseyside, and then just what's he do on his debut? Scores one of the all-time great debut goals against Arsenal. And then when he's playing for Man United, particularly towards the end of his career, it is really the twilight, the nadir of the Wenger era, where they'd become a very, very soft touch. So I understand why that's in Rooney's institutional memory. But I think Arsenal can change it. What I'm disappointed by, Rog, is I thought that in a year when Arsenal were not in the title race, despite being second, when they're 15 points adrift of Liverpool and they can basically concentrate and put all of their efforts into going deep in the Champions League. In a year, for example, when there isn't an obvious outstanding team, that they've come up short again.
That is the agony. Well, I want to dig a little deeper into Arsenal for 1 second, but we'd be remiss if we didn't raise a hat, a beret, a chapeau,
Chapeau.
PSG. I mean, just an immense achievement, honestly, not just tonight, but you look at the gauntlet, Liverpool, Aston Villa, then Real Madrid, slayers, Arsenal in the eye. They may want to make the case that they are the Premier League champions. They have more wins against Premier League teams, I think, than the bottom three. And they've all
Which
played
means they would
35
stay
games.
up, Rog. Is that what you're saying? They would stay up.
Yeah, they've avoided relegation. They've avoided relegation in 6 games in that mini season. I mean, yes, there is a surreal force at heart of this club. The fact that they are an extension of a nation state. Qatar took over in 2011. Have since spent is it 1.64 billion?
Probably trillion, Rog. It's probably trillion.
Why stop there? Gazillion, whatever infinity is. And you can see the power that they will politically. You saw tonight their president who sits on every football board of power in global football. Watch the game right there with the UEFA president Sheffield just side by side. And we're going to remember though, for all the potent football Luis Enrique has coached, with this very different, talk about changing the DNA, this very different squad of young, raw, inexperienced, truly skill-soaked, blessed talent. I mean, we've got to it is a cognitive dissonance story, but I've got to say, Luis Enrique, James, I admire that man so very much.
I do as well, because this would be potentially second Champions League he wins as a coach. Obviously, he hasn't done it yet. He's got to get the job done. But I have immense respect for how this is someone who lost his daughter very young, didn't he? And he's managed to put that behind him, carry her memory with him, and still find joy and passion in his work. And I think that's very special. Also, as someone who lived in Rome and may have a slight affinity for this club here, AS Roma, he had 1 year with Roma, and it was so stressful for him. He was like, guys, I'm out. I'm really sorry. This has been too much for me, which is a real shame in hindsight because he was magnificent. But
And he had the
I
best
remember
owners in. He had the best owners in football.
he did, and they loved him.
The Freakins.
Well, no, it was before that.
Oh, all right. Then I can point the
still
finger.
Americans, still Americans, Palotta.
God bless.
But when his Barcelona team beat Juventus in the Champions League final in 2015, he did dedicate it to his Italian love, AS Roma. So there you go. Cheers, Lewis.
God, I adore that man. I would love nothing more than to speak to that gentleman. I think there's a lot of life in there, and I'm bloody happy for him and the journey that he's been on. We do need to talk about Arsenal for a second. We're going to get to your questions in one moment. First, we're going to live into and then night and night for a second. But Arsenal, let's cap then. If they'd won tonight, James, everything would have felt possible. Instead, they immediately there's no grey zone here. Like you either win and touch the heavens, or you just get throttled back into bottle job FC. And I want to go on the record. I do admire Mikel Arteta so much. I think he's a deeply introspective, brooding man who gently thinks about details and human motivation and betterment, and is obsessed with this game that we love. But football is very literal. 6 years, no trophies, and a sense that Europe, the European trophy or the Premier League trophy that he craved. And a sense that this bridesmaid, never the bride, having to watch her on the slot stroll and instantly become the big Dutch bull bride. I mean, he's admitted that was an agony for him to watch. This nearlyism, the vibes, the hopes, the shattered hopes. There's a sense, James, that it's as good as it's going to get. And it was to this point, there was an optical illusion in which you could see what you want to see. Did the team get undone by early red cards that were unfairly awarded against Arsenal and only Arsenal? Or were they stupidly earned? Were the injuries cruel? He came on our show, it's on YouTube, and just listed off every injury in an agony. Or are they a product of the style of football where he runs his squad, his best young players into the ground? And that lack of a striker, none brought in January, which is unforgivable. Where are you as you sum this up, big picture from an Arsenal POV?
Well, look, I think the overriding view here is that, as with my disappointment felt in the Champions League, where there isn't an outstanding team, even though PSG and Inter have shown themselves to be very good. There isn't, for example, that all-conquering Barcelona of Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, or the Real Madrid of Bale, Benzema, and Ronaldo, or even City. It's the same case in the league, where this season you've had, his mentor and his friend, Pep Guardiola, have the most difficult 3-4 months of his managerial career. City go into free fall. And yes, Arsenal are ahead of City, but for the last couple of years, we've kind of said to ourselves, if it's not going to be City, it's going to be Arsenal. But no, it's not. And those Liverpool years where they've transitioned from, for example, having an old-looking midfield of Henderson, Fabinho, where you thought, actually, okay, we've overtaken Liverpool now as the main competitor to Man City. Well, we've instead seen that Liverpool have come through that transition. They've moved the midfield on. They've moved most of the attack on. They've got a new manager. And even though Trent Alexander-Arnold is leaving, it does feel like the future is bright with Liverpool. Whereas at this moment in time with Arsenal, as you kind of alluded to, it's like, is this it? Okay, it's a relatively young team, but has it hit its glass ceiling? What more can we? What will it take? Where's the hammer to break that glass ceiling? Is it the striker?
It's a pickpocket's fault. The hammer to break the glass ceiling. That's Paqueta incoming. I was going to say Arteta's a brooding man. He came on the show and talked about how he, after the second place finish 3 years ago, was it? He spent the summer looking himself in the mirror. I like to imagine he did it to like a Kenny Loggins song, just brutally, just like staring at himself. And he said, I asked myself, am I the man to take Arsenal to the next level? I mean, we're getting a bunch of questions, and I do want to get to them from you, dear GFOPs. But I wonder what a Mirror will say back to him after this one. There's an interview we did on Tuesday. It's on our YouTube, which he really does analyse his take on this damp squib season. What an agony it will be if Spurs do get past Bodo Glimt, do win against a weakened Manchester United, and find their way into the Champions League with silverware. Um, while finishing 16th in the league and an ability to say they had a better season than Arsenal did. That is North London agony. Gage Wheeler in the chat says, Arsenal fan here. To quote Luthen from Andor Series 1, I've made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. Gage, good on you. I'm glad you're not taking it too hard, baby. Let's lighten the mood by talking quickly about last night. For the ages, Inter Milan 4, Barcelona 3. Inter go through 7-6 on aggregate. How would you say call an ambulance, but not for me in Italian? James, you were there. This Inter team are 972 days unbeaten in the Champions League for a bloody reason. I mean, this was just immense feat after immense feat, as if each of the last goals learnt on and improved the one that came before it. First Inter took a shocking 2-0 lead. Bossa come back, 2 goals in 6 minutes. Took the lead late, as you described at the top. Thought they'd won it. Rafinha stared at the camera. That's game over, right? Despite just leading 6 minutes in the whole bloody leg, looked like against the oldest and heaviest leg team in Europe that they had done it. But an Inter equalised with a Hail Mary of a goal in the 93rd minute because, well, of course they did. We needed to stop there for a second, James, because when Inter needed a saviour, 37-year-old defender Francisco Acerbi rescued them with just a delicious kiss flourish of a flick. It was a flick of a tender lover. His first European goal. What a story. A player in the lower leagues until he was 22, twice battled cancer, and then has quite publicly talked about hitting rock bottom after his father died, and he really, drank. He said, I started drinking, and believe me, I drink anything. He's now in a Champions League final. What a hero.
Yeah, and he played for Inter's rivals, AC Milan. He was chosen to play for them when he was very, very young. Such was his potential. They gave him, if I'm right in remembering this, Alessandro Nesta's shirt, or they basically said, you are going to be the successor to Alessandro Nesta, who, if you talk to some Italian coaches, they will get as excited about Alessandro Nesta as we have all been excited about Lamine Yamal. That's just how Italians are wired. And, you mentioned Acerbi's sort of difficult upbringing, relationship with his father, drinking, showing up for training in not the best nick, and then coming through cancer, and that being a bit of an awakening for him, really. But just, I thought his goal last night was, again, the kind of magical realism of football, where what was he doing up there? I mean, he's a centre back, and when Denzel Dumfries, the nemesis, Denzel the equalizer, as he keeps being called in Italy, when Denzel Dumfries puts that ball in, the only people in the Barcelona box are centre backs, but one of them is his own centre back, who's now just decided he's going to be a centre forward, and scores a wonderful goal, because it's actually a really good finish.
It's an incredible finish.
With his weaker foot. Just like stuff you can't make up, really. And it was just as the heavens had opened as well at San Siro. And speaking to some of the Inter fans after the game, they were saying that the rainfall were the tears of the Juventus fans, of the Milan fans who'd been sat on their sofas celebrating Rafinha's goal, celebrating that Inter, who 10 days ago were on for a treble. Then they lost twice in the league, relinquished their lead in Serie A to Napoli. They lost to AC Milan in the cup. It looked like they were about to go out, having been 2-0 up in the first leg, 2-0 up in the second leg against Barcelona. And no, Acerbi was there. And
that's what rain is, children. If you're watching, it is the tears of destroyed Schadenfreude of your greatest enemies. That is science. That's science. I love that. That is it. And you're right. It was a moment of magical realism. It wasn't the last one. Substitutes Mehdi Taremi and David Fratesi combined for the winner. Heat map of his celebration alone should be studied by science. Got a shout out to goalkeeper Jan Sommer. magnificent, managed to smother everything that young Lamine Yamal could throw at him. Dude prevented 1.44 goals in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final according to XGOT. Also, Denzel Dumfries, I love that man. 2 goals, 3 assists against Barcelona. Spectacular. Remember, Inzaghi's side also put out Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. James, very quickly, you wrote about how despite it all, European football still does not put enough respect on Inter's name. We're going to see them in Munich, into PSG, 2 of the most stylish cities in the world. They're going to collide in one of the most, well, Munich, I guess, you can say it's just the most Bavarian city in the world. Can you give us an early top line on what to expect in that epic rumble?
Well, you know that Munich is actually the most Italian place in Germany. It's one of the most southern. It's closer to Italy. Some of the architecture is Italian. So I think in some respects, Inter will feel more at home because, as you mentioned, they beat Bayern in the quarterfinals, and Fratesi, who got that extra time winner against Barcelona last night, well, he scored a last-minute winner against Bayern Munich as well at the Allianz. So he's going to be looking forward to going back. But we've spoke about goalkeepers tonight, haven't we? Donnarumma making those big saves on Martinelli and Odegaard, former AC Milan player, but his contract's coming up, and Inter are looking at him and thinking, maybe he could be our goalkeeper for the next 15 years. And Jan Sommer's been reading those reports and saying, hang on a minute, no. And has been putting in some of the best performances of his life. So, yeah,
We got ourselves a goalkeeper dance-off in the final. By the way, Arteta's just spoken post-match. He said the feedback I got straight away from their bench was that we were much better than them. Yeah, that's how football is. He also went on to praise Donnarumma, which is another backhanded compliment to himself, saying he was the best player on the field across both legs, a real difference maker. He said he'd make an assessment once he cooled off a little bit. A lot of mirror staring. Also in the chat, Fernando Olamadada loves your mug, James, giving you a big Forza Roma. The Hairy Texan in the chat says, and by the way, I love that name, the Hairy Texan. Inter will have to be one of the most supported teams by neutrals ever in a final. God, if only football outcomes were that way. Let's get to your questions. We'll talk about Trent in a minute. A reminder of how this works here on YouTube Live. Scan the QR code in the top left of your screen. Click on the pinned comment in the chat. Take you into a Zoom where our producer, the Magnifico Jordan, with an A, not an O, James, who can tell you everything you need to know, apart from what it's like to date Bill Belichick. Do not worry. You will not appear on the screen. For those of you who don't want to ask a question, smash the like button. Let's start with, the great Will in Porterville, California. I meant to ask you where you're from, Will. Come on up. Tell us. Pretend I didn't just tell the world where you're from. Come on up and tell us what your question is.
Yeah, Raj, James, I'm wondering when does Arsenal Fan TV get their conclave going for Arteta?
Oh, God. Willie, is this where we are now, James? Is this what happens, that we are on really thin ice for Mikel Arteta? It does feel like something has changed in the momentum, the passion, the engagement. It feels like I'd say the hook has been shortened a little bit. It feels like from a fan perspective, anyway.
Well, I mean, we saw what the Cronkies did with the Nuggets, didn't we? Going into the NBA playoffs, where they were just like, we're ejecting our coach and we're starting over because we think we're going to give ourselves the best chance. Yeah, clearly Arsenal did not think that was the right thing to do going into these semifinals. They still have belief in Mikel Arteta. During the game, black smoke emerged from the chimney in the conclave, which formally means that no decision has been made on a new pope. But it could have also meant that the Cardinals were watching the game.
Do you think that's how it works? That's so funny. Because over here, the Knicks are doing really well in the playoffs, and the news keep interviewing the New York Cardinal, who's making it quite clear that he wants a very quick vote so he can get back and watch the Knicks. But my God, do you think that's what it is? They're just like, should we keep talking? Should we just vote, get this over and done with, and then we can all laugh at Arsenal? I think that's probably what happened tonight. But come on up. Next question from the great Glenn. Tell us where you are and what's your question, you beautiful human being.
Hey, Raj. I am currently in the Schadenfreude happiest capital of the world, St. Louis, Missouri. Oh, the joy I'm feeling at the Cronkies losing yet again. So, I mean, look, I like for the legit Arsenal fans that have been fans for before they took over, my heart goes out to you. But for like ever for the Cronkies, you reap what you sow. That being said, I would like to discuss hasn't the definition of what the Champions League is just been so stretched and so bloated like over the past few years of just adding more and more teams to this tournament? It's like I like I get why they want to add more teams for the sake of money, but I do think that there is something to be said about like the length of the Champions League being one of the bigger catalysts as to why the players like
Are shattered,
the
are
you
exhausted and shattered.
yeah the union for the players are just like so keen to want to step up and say enough is enough, we need to cut the calendar down.
Yeah.
I
So
feel like
it's so
like
bloated,
going
is what you're
back
saying. Do we have a bloat?
yes
Going back to the old days when I grew up, James, before you were
yes
years before you were born, James Horncastle, the European Cup, the predecessor of the Champions League, before the rebranding, it used to just be the winner in every country playing in a draw. It was wham bam, very simple. It was very missionary position Champions League, if you will. I mean, first of all, I love St. Louis. The notion of St. Louis Schadenfreude, that's a special kind of disdain. It comes with its own barbecue rub. Obviously, the St. Louis Rams, the Cronky team. For those of you listening around the world, I'm guessing that's what the linkage is. And Arsenal fans, you will not like it when those first games of the Premier League are played in the United States, and within a decade, Arsenal are moved to the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. But I'm getting ahead of myself. James, do you feel there is a bloat? I mean, also this new format. We've watched some ecstatic football in the semi-finals. I've got to be candid. I love I think a lot of the fact that the home and away goals were taken away just meant there's a more pure, optimistic football. But is there a bloat in your mind? Did this new format work? Is there a connection between the semi-final sizzling and the new format? I'm sure it will be claimed. But what's your take, beautiful?
So yesterday at San Siro, I know a bit of a shortcut to get from the press stand to the press conference room, which is like a VIP stairwell. So I just like kind of go through a fire door and just walk in, and there was nobody on it apart from one man, Giorgio Marchetti, the guy who draws the balls for the UEFA draws. Right? So I said hello to Giorgio, and he turned to me stunned. He was just like, everything has happened. Everything has happened tonight. And but I don't think it's down to the new format, because ultimately, when what's at stake is at stake, when two teams of the quality that we've seen play against each other in these semi-finals, the amazing happens. We saw that with Man City, Real Madrid a few years ago. I do, to Glenn's point about the bloatedness of this season. UEFA wanted to tell us that there would be more jeopardy, and instead there was this illusion of jeopardy in the league phase, because that final day where you had this kind of NFL red zone, let's go to 300 games simultaneously. Instead, there was very little jeopardy. But the illusion came when you saw kind of Bruges players looking on their phone to see whether they'd finished 18th, or you saw Celtic players celebrating because even though I think they lost at Aston Villa, they were still through to the playoff. And that's not jeopardy, ultimately. And I don't think it really worked as an entertainment spectacle. And I think there is too much football at the moment. I love football. It's my passion. But I do think the spectacle on the whole suffers from there being too many games, and the Club World Cup is just going to compound that even more. Even though I am looking forward to visiting the US for that
Coming to be with us. Just come. Make sure you leave, though. We want people to leave. We want them to come. We want them to leave. I'm kidding. I genuinely cannot wait to embrace you and revel in your beauty on this. On this turf, I agree. Ultimately, I think big picture, you've just nailed it. UEFA and FIFA are currently trying to bloat their own product to almost block out the other. That's what we're watching. We're watching games, watching elite footballers, but we're watching a game within a game, a remontada within a remontada between FIFA and UEFA, trying to create tournaments that are so the bandwidth's just drowned. Trying to flood the zone. So we're watching football, we're watching a political battle go on at the same time. And that's ultimately what's driving it. And I think driving the players unbelievably crazy. 2 more questions before we go. And then a request. I'm just putting you on notice, James Horncastle, for a Munich restaurant suggestion, which I will ask after that. But come on up. It's a great Gustavo. We are not worthy. Tell us where you are and what's your question.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm in Orlando, Florida.
We hear you loud and clear. Over. Ooh. Gustavo, what's your question for the great James Horncastle?
All right. I know it's all about Arsenal. I'm actually wearing an Arsenal shirt. Wore it under my work shirt for the first time ever, and of course, it went the way it went.
It's your
but
fault,
I want to ask
about.
Wanted to ask James about my other main team, AC Milan, just because of Inter reaching another Champions League final and the level that they've kept in the league, with not only little turnover in terms of major players, but also building out their squad and keeping their manager, and how well that has gone for them. Even though I think there's some holes in their financial stuff, maybe there's some debt or something. And comparing that to AC Milan, which have seemed to grow their squad and improve, but are now staggering in way mid tables in Serie A, and just kind of how you compare the trajectory of those teams and where you see them going.
Yeah, Horncastle, floor's yours, baby.
So it's really strange because Milan this year unbeaten in 5 games against Inter. They beat them in the Super Cup, came back from 2-0 down, beat them 3-0 in the Coppa Italia. They beat them in the league. And that was the big objective of going into the season, because they finished second last year, but they were miles off Inter, who were champions. It's just every other game has kind of sucked for Milan. And again, to go back to Glenn's point about how bloated the Champions League has become, does anyone remember AC Milan going to the Santiago Bernabeu and beating Real Madrid this season? Feels like a long time ago. But when Inter reached the Champions League final in Istanbul a couple of years ago, I thought that was it for Inter, because the owner, Chinese, Steven Zhang, financial problems back at home, difficult to travel. He'd taken out a loan with an American hedge fund, couldn't pay it back, had to sell the best players. And at that point, I was tipping Milan to be the better setup, more stable, more competitive club at that stage. And yet Inter have done what, this is a great Italian word, which is kind of arrangiarsi, which is just sort yourself out. Even if you're a bit of a mess, get yourself sorted out, you'll be fine. And they've done that. And instead, Milan, better finances, profitable, signed a lot of good players. But ultimately, there's something missing at Milan. And maybe it's the spirit, it's the soul, it's the culture that was lost the day that the owner sacked Paolo Maldini.
Oh my God, that is dark. That was quite an ending. And the amazing thing about Inter Milan is there's not a player on that roster who costs more than, I think, $39 million, 30 million euros. It really is this collective spirit of that aged, wearied, seen it all, done it all, been everywhere, collective. Each one of them an incredible story. It really is beautiful. They are. AC Milan. The way you describe it, it sounds like the Tottenham of the East. It is. It is well run. We're well run. We're well run. Look at the profits.
Yeah, Rog, I was thinking about this today because I always try and put myself in the shoes of someone who is 10 or 15 years younger than me. Because that's how I dress. No, but I mean, but because Inter, this will be their third Champions League final in the last 15 years. Milan haven't been to any of them, and Milan are the Italian club in the Champions League. They've won it 7 times, as many times as Liverpool. Only Real Madrid have won it more times. They are the Champions League, and yet, they haven't been to a Champions League final since 2007. And if Inter win in Munich, I mean, this is even if Milan win the Coppa Italia next Wednesday and they can say they've won 2 trophies, to watch Inter win the Champions League.
It's an agony. I mean, it's going back to that question earlier that you'll never see a final with more neutrals cheering for one team. It does make me think about City and Crystal Palace. And just like, City fans will cheer for City and everyone else will cheer for Crystal Palace. No, Brighton fans will be cheering for Crystal Palace. In the same way, it'll be AC Milan and PSG in a deep, deep, profound, passionate unity for 90 minutes at least. And Godspeed to all. We're going to take one more. It's an Arsenal day. It's so lovely to see his name on the call sheet. Take us home, Mr. Joshua Youngerman. Remind us where you're from. Tell us how you're feeling. My heart goes out to you, beautiful. And what's your question for the mighty James Horncastle?
I'm wondering why the fuck I do this to myself, but maybe James can answer and be my psychiatrist for the day. But I'm in Brooklyn. Long time no see, Raj. How are you doing?
Oh, Joshua, it's so lovely to be with you. Come on up. Tell us what your question is for the great James. Dr.
Right.
James, therapist to Joshua Youngerman. We'll dive on him. We'll take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty gutted, but in terms of attacking talent, what players do you think Arsenal should go after next year? Because I think that is honestly what's separating them. I think they're one of the 5 best teams in Europe, and I think that's sort of been shown with the Champions League run, but I think that's sort of what's separating them. And I'm curious what names you think. I know a lot of people like Big Vic in Portugal, but I'm more of a Benjamin Sesko person, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Mr. Horncastle, Dr. Horncastle, sorry.
Dr. Horncastle, take this away. Do no harm, as the Hippocratic Oath tells us, as you analyse Joshua Youngerman. My suggestion would be Giroud and Beto. That's who I would think Arsenal should go after. But you're more learned than I am. The floor.
Oh, Tarkovsky.
Look, Josh, I think the last few match days in the Champions League have taught us that it's the kind of return of the dribbler, the return of the 1v1 dribbler. And I know that Martinelli and Saka are very good, but I don't want to judge Saka too harshly on missing that chance today. But yeah, I think he's a very good player. I'm an Englishman. I root for him when he's playing for my national team. But is he of the same level? Can he get to the level that we've seen the likes of Kvaratskhelia, the likes of Lamine Yamal, the likes of even Vinicius, who's gone out? Can Arsenal actually upgrade or just have better competition in those roles before you get to the striker? And then in terms of the striker, it's difficult. I don't understand why Premier League clubs, for example, have the opportunity to sign players younger, and then they elect not to do it and let them go to another top 5 league, and rack up a transfer value which is exorbitant. So like Gyökeres, for example, or even Sesko now. I mean, there've been opportunities to sign these players earlier before, and they're now very expensive, and PSR is there. I wonder if Arsenal need to start taking some chances, even on people like Victor Osimhen, for example, who, you look at and think actually his injury record's sketchy. He has to play AFCON in January when there's not just FA Cup 4th round, but there's now Champions League. We can't afford to lose him for those games. But would it be better just to have a guy like that in the building so we can actually at least point to the fact that we did go out and sign a striker? Because let's not forget, in the first 15 minutes tonight, you could have been 2-0 up were it not for Gigi Donnarumma. I don't think the striker was necessarily the problem tonight. If Martinelli scores, if Odegaard scores that chance that Donnarumma somehow keeps out, you're 1 or 2 goals up.
Well, no, I actually agree on that. I think Saka, the issue is he's being played into the ground because there's just no rest for him. But I think he's up there with Kvaratskhelia. They're a bit different players, but I think I think also attackers like a Nico Williams, someone like that, like Saka needs either competition or like a rest, like where Martinelli can be his competition or something like that,
Joshua, you've just described all of us. We all need competition or a rest. Those are the only 2 options possible in life.
I need a rest from football.
You need a hug, baby, is honestly what you need. You need a
I
hug.
do.
And I think the James agony that you've highlighted, we now, if we're Arsenal fans, which I'm not, but I'm going to throw myself in because I was really rooting for you tonight, we now have to play the game of if only Arsenal plus X, we would have won tonight. Arsenal plus, Isaac, what could have happened there? Arsenal plus Beto, I'll tell you what would have happened there. You wouldn't have got out you would have got out the opening round. But you know what I'm saying? We now play that hypothetical agony, which Fabrizio Romano fills and fuels in such a wonderful way. God bless. There is journeying ahead for Arsenal fans. I do believe Arsenal fans can experience joy. I also think, honestly, this is the agony of the current predicament. James, you nailed it earlier beautifully when you said they've obsessed like Moby Dick with Manchester City to be blindsided by Liverpool that you never saw coming, a sucker punch you never saw coming. It's probably, I would imagine, when the smoke clears, makes this all the more bloody painful. But we will see a lot of stories to come. I'm fascinated to hear how Mikel Arteta takes this, not well by his initial comment. But one last question before we let you go, James. Gage Wheeler in the chat says, we can't go without getting a James Horncastle restaurant suggestion for Munich for the final. Putting you on the spot. Where are we getting our Spiegelei? Where are we getting our verse? Where are we getting our Spätzle?
So, guys, if you're coming for a Champions League final, you'll find me at Spartan House. Okay.
You've never scared me more than when you just did that, by the way. That was frightening. It was like you just ripped off a mask and became the Teutonic James Horncastle that I didn't know lied again. Give me it one more time. The Spartan House.
Yeah, a Spartan House. Yeah.
Just give us a blast on it. Tell us what it is. It sounds terrifying. Go on.
Oh, no. I mean, you can still go to the Braukeller where Hitler launched his putsch in the 1930s, if you're
that way
really
inclined.
But no, if you want a nice schnitzel, come.
It's like going to Hooters for the wings. I just go to the Putsch place just for the beers. They're very good. Tell us what we're eating. Pull it together for us.
I will always go for like a Holstein schnitzel, so big schnitzel, veal. And that has fried eggs on top of it with anchovies.
Oh my God, that sounds unbelievable. By the way, if I ever do get to eulogize you, I'd just say James Horncastle. He lived such a hearty life.
Well, yeah, hearty diet. Yes,
I do. I live. I said this last time. I'll say it again. I live vicariously to the great James Horncastle. I know I'm not alone. Karina Lopez in the chat says what we're all thinking. It's such a pleasure to have James Horncastle on this show. Love getting his perspective on Syria. I love getting James Horncastle's perspective on life. Before we go, quick thank you to you all for joining us tonight on a dark night for Arsenal fans. Quick shout out for everything we got coming up at Men in Blazers World Headquarters the rest of the week on Friday, right here on our YouTube. We're releasing a conversation I had this morning at 4 a.m. with the one and only Jamie Vardy. And I'll say what a conversation this was. We really touched upon his incredible career. The incident this weekend in which he blew the referee's whistle while the referee lay on agony on the ground. We go very deep, let's just say, on the Red Bulls, the drink, not the football club. I actually asked him to sum himself up in one word. He didn't think twice. He just goes, an idiot, which is just great. And right after this, I'm going to speak with Wrexham owner Rob McElhenney, which will drop on our YouTube this Saturday. So much content. Subscribe to our YouTube. Subscribe to our pod feed if you're listening there. Drink from the fire hose of wonder we're trying to put out into the world. Till next time, James Horncastle, you're a magical man. Thank you so bloody much for being a light in the darkness this evening.
Thank you, everybody.
You're a gorgeous human being. It's never take a moment of watching football together for granted. Until next time, big, big love, courage,